Hi and welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the AP Principles Performance Task. I know it's probably late in the game and you may be preparing your Principles task, or maybe this is another year and you're preparing early. I'm hoping to talk about a few of the details of this so that you can get straight on some of the more difficult parts of it. And you may be panicking now and you're trying to finish it and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, let's just break it down and make it a bit easier to understand. So I'm going to just talk through a few things, and then what I'll do at the end is I'm going to go through and build one from scratch and try and show you kind of how some of these principles work. So generally this will happen over about a 4-week period. Your teacher will probably give you about 12 hours of class time to work on this, but time is limited and we're heading towards exams. So you should be trying to finish up your app earlier so you give yourself time to prepare for the exams. But there's a kind of a process. Let's talk about the actual thing. Okay, so this is the kind of the large project. Now, the key, one of the big points to make is don't overcomplicate your project. Okay. And we'll talk about how to simplify, but don't overcomplicate. The goal here is for you to use code to do stuff and not to make 1,000 screens which all have different designs. You want to try and use code to make your screen change and do stuff. And hopefully if you've been practicing, you'll have an idea how to do it. This is how the grading breaks down. I'm not going to go into detail in each one of these, but I am going to sort of just touch on them. There are basically 2 points for each part of this thing, and for a total of 6. There's 2 points for this input and output and a response about the purpose of your code. Right? This is kind of from a user point of view, what's going on with your code, why did you make it, how does it work, how does a user use it? The second 2 points, these two here, are about using data and using a data abstraction to manage the complexity in your code. And so these two are really focused about how do you use a list, how do you process your list, and how do you manage complexity in your code. It's not really worthwhile to make a list of like when you could just make 2 variables, but what if you had 1,000 variables? What if you have 1,000 pieces of data to handle in your code? Would you be able to handle it? And that's kind of what that's all about. The last 2 are all about the function that you use and making a function that's going to go and process it's going to do something in your code. Usually it's processing something. It's going to be using a loop. It's going to be using some kind of selection statement. Like so sequencing is regular code, just step by step. Selection is if and else statements, and iteration is a for or a while loop, and you got to use all of those in your code. And you also have to use a procedure, but you'll have to use a parameter. So it takes some input for your function. And so these are basically both of these are about describing your function or using your function. So let's describe the process. And this is what I see in many students' work. And this is the way that I tend to encourage people to approach this. These are the 3 elements that I just talked about in your code. So focus on these 3 major elements before you start dragging and dropping things into your code. Many people like to focus on the design, and that's fair enough. But you got to think about also, where is the data coming in? What data are you using? If you're starting from the data, then it's kind of then that can relate to how you want to display that data. What options are you going to give the user? How are they going to interact with it? And then how are you going to pull that data out of the database into your code and make it useful? So these are all related elements, and these are the 3 major groups. Let's talk about the data. The data that you're using, I don't know why that just popped up. Weird. Okay. Very strange. But let's just say we have a bunch of data in a table. And usually this table you may be importing, maybe you're creating your own, or maybe it's just a series of arrays where all the columns are different arrays. Your data is in some kind of structure, and you've usually got some index which links them all together, right, by row. Now, in your code, you're not just displaying a bunch of data by itself. You want to have this data and you want to do stuff with it. And that's what programming is all about. We're taking some kind of data and we're going to pull it out in different ways. So, for example, this is a function. Your function's job is to pull out data in some way that you are intending. For example, you might say, get all the indexes that have a price greater than 5. And you want to look for all the foods that have a price that's greater than 5. And so you go through your database and you search the prices and you say, okay, index 0 has a price greater than 5. Okay, let's add that to the list. And then you basically making a new little list of these indexes. Right? So your function's doing that kind of stuff. Or maybe you're searching for all the foods which are fruits. And so you go and do a match for all the fruits. And so you come up with apples and bananas, right? Maybe you're not looking for the indexes. Maybe you're just looking for the names. And then you can print that out, or you can use that in some way. So this is how it all relates together. The user is giving you some options, and you're using those options to try and pull stuff out of your database. So I'm going to go to code.org because we use that a lot in our course. Maybe you're using something else, but this is a really easy way to show you how all these three things relate together. I'm going to start on the data tab, and I'm going to look through some of this data to try and find something interesting. Let's see. Well, seeing as we're talking about food, let's have a look at this database. Interesting. We've got some foods, lots of data in here. Seems like something I could work with. I'm just going to import that. Fast food nutrition. And it gives me a bunch of stuff that I can use in my database. Okay, so now let me try and pull this. Now what I've got to do is try and pull this data into my code. To pull data into your code, you're going to use variables, and I don't really like to use blocks. I like to use typing. It's a bit faster for me, but I'll use blocks here because you may be used to blocks. You can see here now in code.org, these are built-in functions. So if you're not aware of them, maybe you can just try and follow along. But let's just say I want to take out one column of my database. So let's take out the name of the item. And let's make another one of the type. So I'm going to pull out two lists here. I want to get the whole column, all of these names, and all of these types. So I go to my code and I make a new variable for names. And I'm going to make one for types. I'm going to use the getColumn feature to pull out this column from my table. And in code.org, I make it very easy to pull out stuff from a table. So if you're beginners, it's very helpful to use this at the start until you get used to it, and then you can start typing. But yeah, names and types. Very simple. So this basically just took out from the get column. So I'll show you here in the examples. You may see the return type here. The purpose of get column is to take a database name and a column name from that database, and to return a list or an array of return a list of that column. And so here you can see that's the result, and it will you can do what you want with it, right? So what I'm doing is I'm pulling out the return type is a list that's coming back to me after I run it. So after this gets run, it's replaced with that list of names. And if I just I'll just go here to the console and print them out so you can see that it actually worked. So here we type it out. And you'll see when I run this, it's going to just pull that out and then print out all of those things here. So there's all the types and these are all the names. Right, you can see it's printed out the whole list. If I just want one item from the list, I'll just choose the first one, index 0. Right, so now it prints out the KFC biscuit, which is a biscuit. And let's choose 10. Item 10, what's item 10? Biscuit with gravy and biscuit. Okay, so you see here how number 10, index 10, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, biscuit with gravy matches here, biscuit, right? So all the things that we're matching here will match with the row, right? Same row number matches the row. If I was to pull in another column, let's go and pull in a column like calories. Let's look up calories. So I want the calories column. So I'm just going to quickly do a very quick and dirty copy and make this calories and change this to calories. Case sensitive. And now copy that. Okay, so now I'm looking up the calories and we can see that I'm printing out 215 for the calories. So you can see here that I'm pulling my data into a list, right? And then I can use these lists to display stuff in my output. Okay, so let's go to the design tab now. I need some way to have my user interact with stuff. So let's do something really basic, but I want to look for, let's just say I want to look for information about a food that I choose. But I need my user to, I mean, it's a big list of foods. If I was to put a drop-down list here, and I want to fill up this options with all of the different stuff that I've got, all the different names, I could run this, I could change the property of that drop-down list. Let's go back to blocks to make it easier. So I could change that drop-down list options, and I could change it to fill up this space with the names list, right? So what happens when I run? It all turns into all these names, see? Pretty cool, right? And if the user chooses this, sushi top with shrimp, I could get the text for that with get text. Oops, why did I go there? Oops, oh, gee. I can get text for, love it, loving it. Oh, I know why. This is kind of why I don't use it. I mean, I'm a bit slow with this stuff. Let's get the text. Okay, so let me save the choice of the user with get text, and I'm going to use drop down 1 here. As you see, this is why I type. So I could save the user choice, what they chose, and then let's print it out. Now I know this is not going to work, but not yet anyway. You see that the user hasn't chosen anything, and when I choose, nothing's happening. Why? Because this code only runs once when I click run, right? This all runs. So it always displays KFC biscuit. To make an event happen, like I want to run something when this event runs, I need the on event thing. The on event is handling an event that happens. So when I choose something, that's an event. So when my drop-down list changes, then I want to run this stuff here. So let's put that in here. Let's print that in there. this is a better option. When, okay, I'm setting my drop-down list, and then when I change the drop-down list, then we can print it out. So let's try it again. Okay, so I've got my list here, and I'm going to choose rice fried with beef, and now it prints it out there. So can you see now that I'm now handling input output? So let's go back to my thing here. You see that the process input output, I'm handling it, right? Now I've got input output. Now I've got data that I've pulled in. And I'm not quite here yet. I haven't made a procedure, but I've got kind of a function here, which is pulling that and printing it. It's not really doing much yet. So I need more, but this is the idea, is we're interacting with data, pulling it in, and I can use it. But it's not really useful right now. Okay, I have a huge list of foods, and it's kind of a big list. Not really convenient for my users. What if I change this, instead of the names list, what if I change this to something else, like types? Could use that. Let's try that. So let's run. Now I've got a list of types, but note that it's pulled in all the different types, because in my data, the types are all repeating. This is not a unique list of types. This is a bunch of types that repeating. So it's kind of, I'm on the way, but I mean, I'd love it to be just a single list of types. So how am I going to handle this? Well, this is kind of what coding is all about. Coding's all about problems like this, where we've got to juggle some data and try and figure out a way to get unique types here. All right, I'm going to switch back to text here. So I've got a problem where I want to actually not display types. I want to have a list which is like unique types. Imagine if I had a list like that. Right now it's an empty list. Is there a way that I can make a unique list? So imagine if I had a function that imagine if I had a function, and I'm just calling this get unique values. This is my imaginary function that I wish that I had, that could take a list in here, and it could just give me back a list of the unique values. I don't want all the values, just the unique ones. Imagine if I had that. Well, this is top-down design. I'm going to go and write it now. So let's go write my imaginary function, and let's make it real. So the idea of a function is to solve a problem in a general way. So we have a general problem where we want to get unique values from a list and get rid of all the duplicates. And we take some kind of list as an input here. Okay, so this is a general, I'm breaking a problem down into a general way to solve it for all different cases. And so this is where we get into a kind of a list and the function part of things, because functions can do really interesting things, right? But we need a procedure to do that. Do I want to do it in my drop-down? No, I don't want to do it here. I don't want to do it here. I want to write this code separately so that, hey, maybe I could do that for names too, or other things. So let's think about this. I have a list of this list coming in as my input, right? Remember, we're thinking generally here. I'm not thinking of names and types now. I'm thinking just general. I've got a list. It has duplicate values. So let's start by making a return list, which is going to be my empty list to start, which I'm going to give back at the end. It's going to contain all the values. And I want to go through this list that they've given me. Hopefully now you're kind of familiar with processing lists. But we use a for loop to kind of go through a list and deal with, like, this will go through all of the indexes of that list, starting at 0, going through to the length. yeah, it won't process the length. It won't go through the length index, but it will go length minus 1. But this, you should be pretty familiar with this kind of loop, right, of processing a list. Now, I want to make sure that I don't add duplicates to the list. So I kind of have to see, is that already in the list? If it's already in the list, don't add it. But now how do I work out if something's already in a list? This is the question. Now, lists kind of have these built-in functions, and some built-in functions are pretty useful. I could search my list. I could have a search function which searches things, but I want to kind of like, I'm going to speed this up a little bit by telling you there's a function here that we can access for a list called index of, and it will it will search a list for if something's in there. So I'm going to search for this thing. Let's type in here, list. So if the item that I'm looking at, right, I'm going through this list here, and I'm looking one by one. If that item that I'm looking at is already in my return list, this should tell me which index it's at, right? So if that index is greater than 0, it means that it's in the list, right? Then I know that that thing is in the list and I don't want to add it. So therefore, if it's less than 0, sorry, but meaning like index of will return -1 if it's not there. So if it returns -1, I know that it's not in that return list, and then I'm going to append item, which means adding it to a list. I'm sorry if you're using a different language and you're not used to these languages, but I want to add this to my return list now. And this kind of code, I know it's probably a little fast to do this. Like, I'm not talking through each little step here, but this will add it to this empty list that I'm using here. Oops. Right. So what I'm doing here is I'm filling up this empty list with things that are not already in the list. Okay, so anything that is not already in there, it's going to get added. And so I should end up here with the unique values, and at the end I'm going to return that return list back to the user. So this is my imaginary, now no longer imaginary, function to get the unique values from a list. Okay, I haven't tested this yet, but let's go and use it here. So I'm using it here. So unique types now should be this list of unique values. And let's put that, instead of types, I'm going to put unique types. And let's see if that fills up my drop-down list with unique values now. Have I messed up somewhere? Where have I messed up? Line 4. Sorry? Types. Missed the S. Let's try again. Okay. And now, oh, look at that. Okay. If you're not familiar with these functions, index of and append item, there will be equivalent functions in your language that you're using. These are just built-in functions that you can learn about as you use a language more and more. Like built-in functions, you'll get to know how to use them. If I had more time to explain some things, you can probably describe, like, index of works for strings. You can sort of look it up here. You can read the documentation and kind of learn about these methods. Right, it returns a value. Right, so you can see here it returns a position of the first occurrence of the search value. The way it works for string is the same it works for arrays, but there's a whole library of different functions you can use. So I don't want to confuse you too much. This is just the way I'm solving my problem here. But you can see that my function here has all the ingredients that we want in our requirements for our performance task. It has sequencing, yes. It has iteration. it has an if statement, selection statement. So it does meet all these criteria. It takes a parameter as an input. And so you can see that I've changed this list now to be a smaller list. Okay, pretty cool. Let's now, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I've got burger, I print out burger. Not a great app so far. I'm not really using any information in my database, right? So what I really want to do is trying to use some of this information. So maybe what I need to do now is to take this type and then maybe display all the foods that match that type. That might be a good idea to do. So let's go ahead now, and then so I'm going to save this choice here. I've got the choice. Instead of printing it out, right, because that's not useful, printing it out, I'm going to maybe look for a way to display a list of options here where I can choose the foods. So let's add another drop-down list here. And let's start, well, first I should make this maybe the food drop-down, or is it the name drop-down? And let's rename this one, drop-down 1, to the type drop-down. Give it some names. But to start with, maybe let's make this hidden. I'm going to hide this to start with. See that? This property can hide something on the page. So I'm going to start by hiding it because I don't want it to show up yet. I want it to show up when I've, let me change this now. Type drop down, yep. Okay, so I want, when I click and when I change my type drop down and I make my choice, now I want to display this one, the name drop down. So there's a way I can make it unhidden, which is just change the property. Set property, or I can even use show element, which is an easy way to show and hide stuff. So I'm going to use show element, and let's show the name drop down. Okay, let's do that. See how this works? So pretty cool. I haven't chosen a biscuit yet. I haven't chosen an option yet. So I'm going to go here and choose hot dog. Bing! See the other box pops up. Kind of cool. I've got an error on line 9. What's this? Oh, get text. Okay, change that to type. All right. So now I need to fill up this drop-down list with a list of names, but I don't have the names yet. I need to be searching my names list for all the names that match the type, right? I need to select the names that match the type. And I'm going to need to do that with another function. If you imagine, I'm going to need another imaginary function. Now, it's going to be slightly different, a slightly different function, right? It's not the same function that I'm doing here, but I do need a similar function which will help me solve that problem. So before I do show this list, I need to go and maybe run a function in here which is going to get me another list of the options, right? The names. So I think the best thing to do is let's create a big list here, up here. I'm going to make a variable here called the maybe a short list of names, short names. I'm going to call it short names. Okay, and right now I'm not going to give it a value. I'm just going to make it up here. And here I'm going to, when I choose something, I'm going to say short names equals. And now here I'm going to, this is where I want my magic function, my imaginary function, to give me that list of names that I'm looking for. So I'm going to say a function called getNames by type. And then I'm going to put the type that I chose here, the choice in here, right? Remember I got the choice from this here. So I'm going to put that choice as my input. So I'm going to give it the choice, and then it should give me a list of the names of the foods that I'm looking for. and save it in short names. Right? So now, right now it's an imaginary function. It doesn't, there's no function that, I don't have any function that runs. So when I run it, it's like, what is get names by type? I don't have it. I got to go make it. So let's go make that function. So this function, get names by type, takes a type of a food, and it's going to give me back a list of the names of the foods. I can't use names because I've already used that. I'm going to say, just say return list again. It's going to give me a return list of the names of the foods. And so I'm going to make another for loop to go through all of the names. Sorry, all of the types. So I want to go through my list of types to look for a match of this type. So if I'm looking for a biscuit, it's going to search for all the types that match biscuit. So I need to go through my types list. And do that. So let's say if the types and the index that I'm looking at equals the type that I'm searching for, let's add to this return list. Now, what do we want to add into this return list? We want all the names of the foods, right? So the name I'm going to add to this append item. I'm going to use this same thing, append item. I'm going to add to this return list. And I'm going to add the name that matches that same index, right? Because remember that in your database, the rows match, right? So if I'm looking through this types list, index 0, index 1, index 2, if I find a match, then I'm going to look across here at the same index for name. That'll give me this name, and I'm going to save that into my list. So I'm making this short list based on the name. So I'm adding the same name, which matches the index here, for the type that I'm matching here. And so I append that item to this list. And at the end, what am I going to do? Return list. I'm going to return that back. And so at the end, I'm getting this get names by type into this list here, short names. What do I want to do with this? I want to update this this option list, the name dropdown, with the I want to do it like I did here. I want to update this. So I'm going to copy that and then put that in here. So when I've got my short names, I'm going to put short names here so that the list updates with the short names. So pretty powerful. I've got short names now coming into this property here. And now I can show that list, and it should have that list of my names. So let's go test it out. Hopefully I didn't make any glaring mistakes. So I'm going to choose, let's say, bread. And did I get my property updated? No, I didn't. What happened? I updated type. I updated the wrong one. Okay. Hopefully maybe if you saw that at home, you were screaming at me through the screen. Okay, name DD. Let's fix that. I fixed that now. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, go to bread. Aha, here's my list of bread. Okay, let's go back and change another one. Ice cream. Okay, now it's updated to ice creams. Now nothing happens when I choose it yet. Salad, let's choose salads. And now it's updated salads. So see how I've refined my list shorter and shorter, right? I've got now two functions which do different things. This function takes a list and gets all the unique values from that list. Documentation is very important. I even recommend documentation before you write the function so you know what the function is meant to do. This one takes type as input and returns a list of all foods matching that type. Returns a list of okay. So now I kind of have a type. I've got a food here. Now, what if I chose McDonald's side salad? Now I'm really specific in my data. A McDonald's side, well, if I look it up, I can then go and look at my calories and try and find a match, right? If I find a match with there, I can go look at here and find a match with how many calories, or I can do it for fats. I can do it for all of these things. If I look up and find the index that that matches at, I can then go and use that same index to look up any of these values here. So I could then start displaying results on my screen of these kind of things like fat, protein, carbohydrate. So what if I was to display fat, protein, carbohydrate here for all these foods? That might be a useful app, quick app. And note that if I solve this one problem, right, to display fat, protein, carbohydrate, that applies for every single food in this list. And I'm doing it on only one screen. Note that I don't have to have many screens. Through this code, my code is doing all the hard work. So let's go here, and I'm going to finish this up now by adding these. I'm going to use a label. So let's go put some text here. Okay, fat. So this should be fat. Protein and carbs. Now it's not going to be a beautiful app, but if I just kind of rework it here, it'll be passable. It'll pass. All right. So however it's displayed, we want now to have another. Now technically, like these ones probably should be hidden as well until I make a choice here. But I'll leave that for now. We want another label over here, which is going to have the amount of fat, protein, carbohydrates in here. Now, right now, there's no good IDs. Keeping good IDs is really important. So let's say this fat label, fat label. I'll call fat label. Protein label and carbs label. And then let's say this is fat text. Protein text. Carbs text. Okay. And obviously I don't want to really have any text in there at the start. I'll keep it all blank. Okay. So my job is to update this property. When I look up the information that I'm going to look for, when I choose something here, I want to look up and find that info. And I'm going to look up and display it. And I'm going to adjust the property of this thing here. So my job is to adjust the property, the text property here. So let's go and then do that. Now when I've chosen this, right, I know now. Oh, actually, I don't know yet. So we need one more on event, don't we? We need an on event for when they choose the food. So let's put that there. Remember, we've got a is it name drop down? Yeah, name drop down. And we will, when they make a choice, so when they change it, we want to do something similar. Like we want to get text like this line here. Let's think about my naming system. Not great, is it? What's this choice? This is actually, so let's call this choice choice type. I'm going to fix my naming system here a little bit. I think I prefer that. We don't really need this line anymore. I don't print it out anymore, so I'm going to take that away. Okay, so I need this line. So I'm going to just copy this line here. Okay, we need something similar, so that when we change the name drop down, we're going to save the choice, but not the choice of type. We're going to save the choice of name, and we're just basically getting the text that they choose here, the name from the name drop down. And just to make sure it works, let's print it out. Well, my screen is frozen. That's okay. There we go. So let's choice name. Let's print it out here, and let's see if that works. Shall we? Let's see if it works. Getting some freezing going on here. I think maybe it's a network issue. Oh dear! Wow, that's a terrible thing to happen in the middle of a video. Okay, let's run. Okay, good. Seems to be running. No. We are having some technical issues. So okay, there we go. Okay, so you see here, I'm printing out the choice name, the one that I chose, and no matter which one you choose, it'll print it out. So I can use that now. I can use this name to look up the data, right? I'm going to go through my database and find this name, right? Search the data for the name, use that index to look up the carbs. But I haven't got my carbs in here yet, or I've got my calories, so I need to copy and do that for protein and fat. So let's change this one to fat. Let's change this to fat. Pretty sure it's fat. And change that one to protein. And change that to protein. I'm hoping that that's right. Okay, doesn't exist. What did I do wrong? Let's try and search for it here. Code.org make it a bit easy. Okay, it had grams after it, so these things happen. Has to match exactly. So what was that? Calories. Yes, and protein. Choose protein. Okay, good. Wait a sec. Was I doing calories? I was doing carbs, wasn't I? Fat, protein, carbs. Okay, I suppose calories would be useful too. Let's do calories too. Choose fast food nutrition. And okay, I getting carried away with my details here, but now that I've got my lists, I can now look up the details, right? So I can get nutrition for all of these things here. So maybe what I need to do now is to have a function which will display nutrition, okay, given the name of a food. So let's imagine that when I choose that name here, I don't really want to print it out, but what I want to do is I want to display, or I want to display nutrition given that choice name. So I want to display the nutrition on the screen. So the job of this function, this imaginary function, will update the screen with the nutrition info for the given food name. All right? So function display nutrition and the name of the food. And my purpose here is to search for that the details for that food, right? So I'm also going to use the for loop, right? For var I equals 0, I, and which list am I searching? Well, I'm searching the names list, right? So the names list. So I less than names dot length I plus plus. And I want to look for a match, right? I'm looking for the name that matches the name that I'm looking for here. So search if names I equals name. What do I want to do? Well, I want to set the property matching, right? Matching this I. I want to set the property of the fat, the protein, the carbs. I can probably add calories down here later. So I want to go set property. Which property? I'm not loving the speed of this, so let me pray to the gods of code.org that they let me type to finish this project out. Come on. Here we go. Maybe we'll go back to blocks. Make this easier. Not loving this, but anyway, so I think hopefully you can get the idea. If this doesn't work, and this just doesn't let me work, hopefully this sort of has given you an idea of like how we're moving between all these levels. Okay, here we go. Now, where was I? Display nutrition, yes. So I was setting a property here, right? Let's go and do it again. So set property. And I'm going to update this fat text. And which property do I want to update? I want to update the text. And what text do I want to update it to? Well, I want to get the fat. I've got a list of fats up here. Remember the fats list, it should match with the index. So fat, I'm going to use fat and the same index I. Now I'm going to do the same thing for set property for really lovely. Really lovely. Okay, well, anyway, so let's maybe just do 2 because I'm getting tired of this delay. It's really bumming me out here. So let's try protein. Was it protein label? Or protein text? And let's update that text to the protein list and use the same I value. And there we go. And so hopefully this display nutrition will take that choice that I made, search that name in the names list, find the index it's at, and then set the property using the fat index and the same index in the fat list and the protein list to display here. And I'll leave carbs for another day. Okay, so biscuit, here we go, choose breakfast sandwich. And let me choose McGriddles. Bading. We got fat, we got protein. Change it again, we get a different result. Change it again, different result. Go back here, change to nachos. Nachos with cheese, change this, bidding. Now, obviously, when we click in here, there's no option. I mean, there's biscuits chosen, but there is no details. I don't like that behavior. It's not great. So we probably have to figure out a way to solve that. But that's kind of a small issue. The main issue is showing how we are now moving between user input and database lookup and functions to do that. You'll see that my functions here are like little tools that I use I want to do this. I want to pull this stuff out of the database based on this input, right? It's my tools are powerful because I can do kind of cool things with them, but I can also, if I'm looking in my code, I can just think about them as like little tools that I don't really have to think about the details. Once they do what I want them to do, I can hide the details and I can just use them. Give it a name, it'll display the nutrition. Give it a list, it'll give me back unique values. Give it a type, it'll get all the names of that type. So these are kind of like powerful little things that I can use, right? So I hope this video was somewhat helpful in showing you these connections and how to do your PT. I don't want to take up too much time, but this is just, I guess, a kind of a rough sort of view of how you might go about your project. And hopefully you can connect these inputs, outputs, and do them all really well. And that's it. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.